Hello, 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 and thank you for joining me here for Talk About It Tuesdays. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Uh, let's start with Palestine.
I don't see enough people talking about this. You got whole artists making songs calling for the deaths of people who are supporting Palestine. And they just get to get away with it. Like, how? How?
Indigenous people, war criminals.
Do y'all remember when Joe Biden got riled up over apartheid in South Africa?
Favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated.
Well, what happened? Why you sound like a freedom fighter here but can't call out apartheid in Palestine? South African apartheid started the same year as Israel was established, 1948, and a white minority controlled the country. From 1960 to 1983, 3.5 million black Africans were forced out of their homes and into segregated neighborhoods. Then they were stripped of their citizenship in their own homeland. And 21,000 people, at least, were killed by political violence. Similarly, in 1948, Israel was established on Palestinian land. They call this the Nakba, when 700,000 Palestinians were forced out of their homes, and their citizenship was stripped from them at the same time that Israel said Jewish people all over the world could move to Israel and become citizens. They weren't separated into different racial groups like in South Africa, but they were designated as refugees, a class of people with no citizenship, no rights, and no land. Look, it was apartheid in South Africa. It is apartheid in Palestine, and I need President Biden to keep that same energy.
Some more news on white supremacy out of Israel. An ex-Israeli cop stopped a shooting at a bus stop. When he was done stopping the shooting, he tossed the gun he used away, he went down on his knees, and he put his hands up in supplication for the IDF who were arriving. When the IDF arrived, he shouted, "Don't shoot me, I'm Jewish, I can show you my ID card." The IDF did not listen, and one of the members of the IDF at the scene took out his own weapon and made the man bleed to death. When the truth of the matter came out, that he was an Israeli citizen, an ex-cop at that, all Netanyahu had to say about the incident is, that's life. Under white supremacy, all those who are not explicitly in power are disposable and easily. There is no humanity, there is no empathy, no sympathy under white supremacy, there is only the rule of power. No one is human except for the ruling class. Remember that.
طب انتوا مين يا ألمة؟ في ضغط عليكم؟ طب عايشين يا ألمة معك؟ ايش يا ألمة؟ حاضر حاضر قديش عمرك انت؟ اختك مين سارة؟ طرزان اخويا البوبو. قديش عمره طرزان؟ حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل. انا ساعد اخويا طرزان هيك جنبي صح؟ شايفه ضوء؟ يلا يا ألمة، هيني بدي اطولك طيب يا عمو؟ والله لا طولك يا عمو. ماشي يلا يا عم حبيبتي يا ألمة يلا ماشي يا عم يلا يا
شوف اخواتي
ماشي يا عم
شوفوا مشتقت لهم.
هذه ألمة؟ تعالي شاطرة يا ألمة.
ايوه اشتريت
صح قلت لك حنطلعك
اصبر بس عشان اعرف اطلع.
يلا روح
تعالي يابا تعالي يا اختي تعالي.
ألمة
شوف الام وين هاي جت تعالي.
ألمة وين اخواتك جنبك؟ طلع علي.
اخواتي هنا
هنا
هذه امي هنا وامي هنا.
ايش؟
امي
هذه الام اللي بتزعج هنا.
So the United States is punishing Yemen for supporting Palestine through the World Food Program that the UN has set up over there. The UN has been providing aid to Yemen every single year, and this year the amount of money that went into their aid has been $1.16 billion in helping the people of Yemen with food and all types of aid, and the US just cut it off. They just cut off the aid because Yemen is supporting Palestine. This is what the United States and these colonizers stand for. This is what they do. They come into your country, they mess it up, they start wars between you guys, civil wars and all kinds of stuff. And then you guys, the country is starving and need of help. And then they play this image like, oh, we are your savior. We're going to come and help you. Even though they started your conflict, they started your war. And then you are forever in debt to them because they're helping you with all this food and money and your people need them, blah, blah, blah. And then whenever you don't do what they want, this is what they do. Yemen, they're stopping the aid. Millions of people in Yemen needs food. And the U.S. just barred the aid to come to Yemen. This is what they do. This is what the colonizers do. It's like we're living in a dystopia. They're stealing so much from Yemen. They're making sure that Yemen is always fighting each other. There's a civil war in Yemen. That they caused that. They're responsible for that. And the people are in need of help. And then they come as this savior complex, like, oh, we're going to help you. We're going to save you. And this is what they do if you don't do what they say. They take away the aid. Isn't it fabulous? Isn't colonial power just impressive? This is what they do in Africa everywhere. In Africa everywhere. They punish you. And they're the reason why Yemen is starving. They're the reason why Yemen is starving in the first place. Crazy, isn't it? America. And they portray themselves as America the Great. Yeah. How pathetic.
I know you've heard me use this before, but let me use it again. How much of a savior are you when you start the fire, then come put out the fire and tell people you'll give them a couple of days of refuge? And I know that sounds familiar because that's pretty much what the Red Cross does. After a fire, after a disaster, they give people a stipend to stay a few days. Where do you think they got it from? Why do you think nobody pushes back on it? The propaganda is so deep. On Capitol Hill today, university presidents, just a handful of them, because we have hundreds and hundreds of them, were called in to talk about anti-Semitism on campus. I'll leave it at that. You want my further thoughts? There's a link in the comment to the Spotify podcast, which is more short form, that will give that to you. But there's 3 more videos. Here we go.
Somebody bring Kim Kardashian to the front of the line. Do you know that your people, the Armenians, also exist in Palestine and that Israel is kicking them out of their worship places and their homes too? And that they've been fighting the Israelis military for so long to not destroy their places of worship? Huh? Do you know there's a pushback? And that they said they're not going to leave because this is a sacred place to them too? Huh? Just like it's a sacred place for Muslim Palestinians, Jewish Palestinians, Christian Palestinians, Armenians also have a place in Palestine that is sacred to them, and nobody kicked them out, nobody killed them, nobody bombed them, nobody had conflicts with them before the European Jews came and settled in Palestine, and now they are taking over the whole place and unaliving everyone, not just Muslims. Look at this. Yo, people, I need of you. Where are you? Where are you? Look at what's happening to your people. And there's a lot of them in Jerusalem. They're also not respected. They're also being targeted. Like, what is going on over here? According to the article, the Armenian community has been there since 1600 years ago, and they have been pushed to be confined in the Armenian quarter. Does this sound familiar, guys? Isn't that what America did to the Native Americans? The Native Americans own America. This is their land. And American pushed them, white people pushed them, and now they live in reservations, right? This is what they did. This is what Israel has done to the Armenians. Pushed them until now they have little places in Jerusalem. And, now they're like, where else are we going to go? This is all we have, and you can't take this from us. And one of the leaders of the group says, you know all your neighbors. If I don't have milk at 1 a.m., I just knock on their door. If I don't have bread, I call my friend. It's a community. This is what Palestine was all about. Everybody knew each other. Whether you're a Muslim, Palestinian, Christian Palestinian, Jewish Palestinian, Armenian Palestinian, it doesn't matter. Everybody respected each other. Everybody cared for each other. Everybody came together as one. You can go downstairs and get milk from your neighbor. And it doesn't matter what religion they're from. It was peaceful in Palestine until you Zionists came and took it over and had this propaganda campaign to make it look like it's a religious war. It's not a religious war, and it's not even a war. It's a genocide. You stole people's lands, and it doesn't only belong to Muslims. It belongs to all other religions. Like, what is this? What kind of inhumane nonsense is this? Look, the Armenians are also going through it. They've been going through it.
I'm going to get to the last two videos, but let me say this. We all see in our comment sections, all over social media and in real life, people wanting to remind us what their ancestors went through, whether actual factual history or some bullshit white supremacist talking point. But when it's time to step up and stand up for those people, because from the beginning of this, I've seen so many Armenian Americans. Let me repeat that. Armenian Americans go, well, what about the Armenian genocide? What about blah, blah, blah? Take center stage. Take center stage. You centered yourself when you did not know that your people were suffering. And why didn't you know your people were suffering? Now that it's confirmed that your people excuse me, are being treated just like the indigenous Palestinians. Now you're hoarse? Now you have laryngitis? No, ma'am. No, sir. No non-binary individual. Speak up. Stand up. Here's your time to shine. You've been talking about oppression and equating it to chattel slavery, genocides of indigenous people within the United States. You equated it to the detriment that the model minority myth does to the Asian community. Here's your chance to shine. Where are you? Where are you? You've used a past genocide to justify your cultural appropriation of other people's culture. Where you at? You must be with Lizzie in the box. Here we go.
You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape, of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believed they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights. We are looking at a situation where there is so much dehumanification, where people are not seen for the value that they have.
This was Josh Paul, a former US Department of State official. On October 19th, just after 12 days of the start of the aggression on Gaza, Josh Paul resigned from the US Department of State. In his letter of resignation, he went into details why he took that decision. And one of the main points in his letter is the US Department of State approach to how Israel is using the American arms and whether Israel is abiding to the laws of war.
But this is American policy. It's bipartisan, decades long. Israel is America's strongest ally in the Middle East, and America provides the most aid in the world to Israel. And of what was so different that made you resign publicly?
Well, in all the arms transfers I've been a part of discussing before, including to Israel, there has always been space for discussion and debate. You can raise concerns about how are these arms going to be used. Do we have confidence that laws of war, laws of proportionality are going to be respected? Do we have concerns about some of the units that these arms might be going to and their track records? What was different here was that there was no discussion. There was no space for that discussion. There was simply an approach of essentially the barn doors are open, and that remains the case. The Wall Street Journal reported just in the last couple of days that America has transferred over 4,000 dumb bombs to Israel, several thousand guidance kits, and 45,000 artillery shells. And when we say that we have a responsibility to, or a commitment to defend Israel and to support Israel's security, I think we have to look at the situation on the ground and say, is that what is actually happening? Is Israel more secure as a result of our assistance, or has our military assistance enabled Israel to move ahead with the expansion of settlements in the West Bank, to continue the siege of Gaza, and to take steps that ultimately undermine its own security rather than leading to a comprehensive peace?
You notice in this incident how Israel approached the charity group, which, as he said, it's called Defense for Children International Palestine. Israel approach to this group explains why Israel labels anything they do not like with terrorism. And it doesn't matter how legit they are or how they are recognized by the international community. Like literally, before the truce, Israel ambassador to the United Nations claimed that the United Nations agents on the ground in Gaza are part of Hamas. He didn't only touch on that, he also touched on the right approach to approach Hamas, which deserve a good listen.
Do you believe that in order to have some kind of peaceful resolution, so this never happens again, that Hamas has to be removed from power?
How do you neutralize Hamas? The answer is through a lasting political settlement that provides a Palestinian state, not a process that promises one, holds out the promise, and never gets to it. You neutralize Hamas by showing the Palestinian people that if they want to succeed, the route is there for them to do so through a political process rather than through violent resistance. Until we have that political process in place, you cannot defeat the Palestinian resistance.
The world learns from each other tyranny. They use so much propaganda against each other's citizens that they begin to believe the propaganda, which means that they forget that more violence, more oppression causes people to become more militant, more vigilant, more vocal. Continuing this is not going to stop people from pushing for Palestinian freedom. If it's not Hamas, it's going to be another group. Over and over and over again. Because yes, they learned how to do this from what their ancestors endured in the Holocaust, but they're ignoring that they're a Palestinian descendants of Holocaust survivors, that they're Palestinian Holocaust survivors. See, what a lot of people are missing is that when they're talking about the Jewish community, and never forget, they're only talking about Ashkenazi, aka European Jewish individuals that consistently want to tell you they're not white. Race, ethnicity, and nationality are three distinctive things. Your race can be a myriad of things. And you can hold an ethnicity and a nationality with people who phenotypically do not look like you. And in Israel right now, first of all, the vast majority of the population are not what they would call committed Zionists. And if you want more information about that, tagged in the description of this video is a breakdown of a series that I have that breaks it all the way down, even to the World Zionist Congress. Yes, they have that. But they're not talking to you about Asian Jewish people. They're not talking to you about Black Jewish people. They're not talking to you about anybody who's melanated and Jewish. The face that they're putting out is the eugenic laden, European standard, Anglo-Saxon centered face that was used against them in the Holocaust. And who did they learn the Holocaust from? And they didn't pay attention to the slave revolts. They didn't pay attention to the advancement of technology and how we're all able to connect with one another and dispel the racial tropes of white supremacy. Because they're banking on racism, white supremacy, and overall hatred taking over and blinding what they still believe is the majority of the global population. Why do you think for so many generations they've tried to convince you that racism no longer exists? They always want to point to other parts of the country, but what's one part of the country they don't? I mean, other parts of the world, but one part of the world they never point to. Because they've taken the atrocities that their ancestors endured, plus the atrocities that have occurred and are currently occurring in the United States. And what are they doing? They're spreading it out. Because you have people that are called settlers. Does that not sound familiar? That are strong arming people out of their homes, off of their lands. Does that not sound familiar? The whole way that Israel was colonized, doesn't that sound familiar? Wanting religious freedom. Does it not sound familiar? Let me say this again. Creativity and ingenuity is not pushed forward. It does not flourish in a garden full of weeds, because creativity and ingenuity are the flowers of the garden that must bloom, whose seeds must ride upon the wind in order to expand the garden, so that everybody can pluck from it and everybody can benefit from it. White supremacy and colonization are the weeds that suck the life out of it, that overtake the garden when the gardener has been rendered unconscious. This is why you see the same tactics and the same motives done over and over and over again. This is why it has always boggled my mind that they tell us to forget about the atrocities towards Black, brown, indigenous people of color, but they want us to remember everything that affects white people, but it all comes from the same playbook. So when you teach us fervently not to forget, and you teach us the nitty gritty, when you come back to use it against us again, we are more heightened to it. We are more heightened to it. But here's the final video.
I found out something absolutely insane about Israel, and you need to see this. As we all know, Israelis and Zionists used the Holocaust to justify the genocide of the Palestinian people, and they basically say that because of the Holocaust, they needed to create a safe space for Jewish people to live, and in theory, that's a wonderful idea. In actuality, they ended up ethnic cleansing an entire group of people and massacring them for the last 75 years, which we all know. So you could imagine my shock when I was scrolling through Instagram and this ad comes up on my timeline. So this says, please help us feed a Holocaust survivor today. And then this is basically a quote about this Holocaust survivor from 2020 saying that she basically survives off of the food from these donations. It said there are thousands of New York-based Holocaust survivors below the federal poverty level living in isolation. And most of these survivors are over 80 years old and are without family, friends, or access to food. Now, you could imagine my shock when seeing this because, as we all know, Israel has received billions of dollars a year in our tax money from the United States of America. So in my head, I'm like, okay, if Israel's getting billions of dollars a year and they've built this place using the Holocaust to justify it, wouldn't they be feeding their Holocaust survivors? So then I was like, you know what? Maybe this is just the Holocaust survivors who decided to stay in New York or living in America. Surely the ones living in Israel, the entire purpose of this country is to protect them, are being fed and taken care of. And then I was even more shocked to find this article that says thousands of Israeli Holocaust survivors struggle in poverty. 50,000 Holocaust survivors living in Israel are living below the poverty line. It gets crazier. So, Hadassah Hershkovici fled to Israel in search of a home after the Nazis murdered her entire family. But while $1 million apartments pop up throughout her Tel Aviv neighborhood, she lives in a shack originally built as a laundry room on the roof of a 5-story building. Then it goes on to say that out of 190,000 Holocaust survivors living in Israel, she's one of the 50,000 estimated to live below the poverty line. While so many people in Israel are living as millionaires, we cannot ignore the fact that the state has failed to provide the remedy, welfare, containment, treatment, and attentiveness that Holocaust survivors need and deserve. And this absolutely shocked me because, as we've seen on TikTok, Zionists are using "never again" as their slogan, indicating that Israel is put in place to prevent another Holocaust and to protect Jews from the Holocaust. But they're not even protecting the Holocaust survivors that are living there right now. Our Holocaust survivors are literally starving, living off of other people's donations. Which is absolutely mind-blowing because if you know anything about Israel, they're begging people to go live there. And they're paying for all sorts of things. They're paying for birthright trips. They're paying for people to live there. They're buying people mansions. Yet they can't afford to feed their Holocaust survivors. So the next time someone tells you that Israel has to exist because of the Holocaust survivors, remind them that they don't even care about their own Holocaust survivors. And the billions and billions of tax dollars we're sending them every day is not for anything other than giving money to the settlers who are originally from America and Europe to terrorize Palestinians. This is crazy.
Kind of like how the United States treats veterans. Like I said, doesn't it all sound really, really familiar? Doesn't it all sound really familiar? Now, I remember for years, there being a lot of commercials asking people to donate to Holocaust survivors around the world, but all of the videos came from Israel. You know, if you take snapshots and do a Google image search, And then you have Holocaust survivors within the United States, just like we have veterans. Starving, can't make ends meet. And what they provide, it goes deeper. Like I said, tagged in the description of this video are some series that break everything down, because they're not just given housing, they're giving basically crash courses in Hebrew. Yeah. They're giving them all the tools to fake it and never make it, to appear indigenous. But all of their propaganda is predominantly towards English speaking nations, you know, the UK and the US. They're going to tug at your heartstrings. This is why they use the Holocaust and tell Black folks you don't need reparations. Forget about chattel slavery. It was a benefit for you. Hmm. And you know what's truly, truly mind boggling? The whole term and the concept of ghettos came up during the Holocaust, but who is attributed to ghettos nowadays? And the United States just want Israel for the pathway that it provides in order for them to better negotiate for natural resources that are about to be obsolete. Yeah, there's a whole summit going on right now where big oil producing countries are like flipping out, like, no, you don't need to be more conscientious towards the environment. Get from us. Just like when the whaling industry, when we used to get fuel from whaling, but we survived, we thrived. It's just the money was going into somebody else's pocket. And then those people who, started losing, they're like, and capitalism is bad. Yeah, it's bad when you can't benefit from it anymore. But I digress. Now, let's move into some updates. We're going to start from December 1st up until today. And do keep in mind, the fourth GOP debate will be tomorrow at 8 p.m. So we will be starting an hour early. Thus far, I have not seen any alternate programming scheduled from Trump. So maybe he's given up on that. If anything comes up, I'll bring you the what, and give you the updates on it. But coming out of Fulton County, Jeffrey Clark, per the Washington Post, Clark went along with the big lie in order to plot to become the United States AG. In a leaked text exchange, he stated, and I quote, "And I wonder if I'm worthy or ready." He also stated, and I quote, "God does what he does for a reason, and that's why your ass is indicted." If you thought that you scheming on a schemer meant that you were properly qualified to become the United States Attorney General, baby, I got some swampland 2 blocks from me I want to sell to you. All right. Don't worry about the scale, and ignore those Lego blocks surrounding it. Okay, just buy it. Clark would have been placed as Attorney General in order to weaponize the Department of Justice to steal the election for Trump. Obviously, Clark reached out to Lawrence O'Donnell of MSNBC via Twitter. Like I said, we ain't changing his name. We don't care what its adoptive father wants to call him at this point, to try to defend Trump over being called out for not knowing that cable news is not under FCC rule. Clark, you must really believe that Trump is going to win this election. He don't have a chance in hell at doing that, but okay. Where everybody else is losing their shit. Like, well, what if Trump cut that shit out. Nikki Haley has been endorsed by the Koch brothers. We know how powerful they are in this country. Trump has a trial that's about to begin in 3 months, baby, and that's a criminal trial from the Department of Justice itself. I am not worried about Trump. I truly am not. And all these people having these think pieces and these hot takes, and if you don't vote this way, then first of all, it's a whole almost a little less than a year out. Most motherfuckers in this country do not know who they're going to vote for or how they're going to vote a week or even a couple days before the election. I am not about to freak out about what could plausibly happen. And everybody's talking about polling, but are you talking about the reality that 18 to 30-year-old young Republicans don't want to vote at all because they don't want to vote for Trump? Y'all missed that in the midst of all your think pieces, of all of your fear mongering. The Republican voter base that they need most doesn't want to vote at all. At least not if Trump is the front runner. Well, let's go on. The New York Appeals Court and Trump, after 15 days, both gag orders were reinstated in full. Judge Engoron vows to, and I quote, enforce the gag orders rigorously and vigorously. Shortly after the orders were reinstated, Trump decided to attack the judge's wife via Truth Social because he can't go on to any other social media platform because he has a non-compete clause. And whatever he puts on Truth Social, he has to say verbatim on any other platform. And that's about as smart as these TikTok creators that take their TikTok content and put it on every other social media platform and then get pissed that people aren't following them on other platforms. I don't want to see the same shit over and over and over and over again. I ain't Nelly. I'm not doing it over and over and over. No. Now, historic news, and y'all knew that I was going to have to talk about this because this was the first congressional expulsion in 20 years. Santos, at approximately 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on December 1st, George Santos was expelled from the House. He is only the sixth person in history to be expelled, and he was expelled by a vote of 311 to 114. Previously expelled were John B. Clark of Missouri in 1861. Look at the year, you know why he was expelled. John W. Reed, Missouri, 1861. Henry Burnett, Kentucky, 1861. Michael Myers, Pennsylvania, 1980. Once again, you want to know more about why Michael Myers was questionable, check out the APAC series that's linked to this video. James Trafficant of Ohio, 2002. And who child, I did a series on him a while ago. Previous expulsion attempts were Preston Brooks of South Carolina in 1856. The motion failed. Lavelle Rousseau of Kentucky, 1866. The vote failed. Barney Frank, Massachusetts, 1990. The vote failed. Now, 2 Democrats voted against expelling him, and 2 Democrats decided to be neutral and vote present. Now, there must be a special election held within 80 days, and the date for that must be selected within 10 days. So we're coming up on that deadline now. Come on, Governor. Now, a little update on Trump. A 3-judge panel of the appellate court ruled that Trump isn't immune from civil lawsuits regarding January 6th. Because remember, either the survivors of Capitol Police officers or Capitol Police officers themselves have some civil suits coming against him regarding his self-coup, aka the January 6th insurrection. Capitol officers are suing him due to the riots and the insurrection. This may encourage other officers to sue Trump for damages that have been incurred. Now we got to round back to Santos. Santos, according to the New York governor, Santos was just taking up space. This is the third expulsion vote this year when he was finally expelled. The second expulsion vote was exactly 1 month to the day that he was expelled. And New York's 3rd district must hold a special election, and this special election might go to the Democrats because it was a district that was won by Biden quite easily. And keep this in mind, the scandal might flip votes in neighboring districts for 2024. Now, he was expelled without a conviction, and this was something that in recent decades, not historically, just in recent decades, that was a custom that nobody would be expelled or even put up for expulsion unless they were indicted or even considered for removal. But, Santos is a special character, honey. Now, Hunty, coming up to today, today. Speaker Johnson. Let's go through it. Now, Speaker Johnson is now pushing for an impeachment inquiry. Keep this in mind. It is an inquiry. It's not a trial. At the end of this inquiry, Biden would not be impeached, regardless of what they found. So he's, pushing for an impeachment inquiry into Biden after he was invited to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. And after that meeting, a lot of things have intensified for Speaker Johnson. And my thing is, I'm wondering if his end goal is a SCOTUS nomination from Trump. If he really believes that either Trump is going to be elected or he can help Trump steal the election more effectively than he did before, because he is now in the position of the House Speaker, if he wants to get on SCOTUS. Just a hypothesis. But he had previously stated that there was no evidence for any impeachable offenses. He also stated that he does not want any more January 6 rioters arrested and or prosecuted. Per Liz Cheney in her new book, I will be trying to get my hands on that soon. We got a lot of books to go through. After January 6th, Johnson used what she said, and I quote, "are bait and switch tactics to get people to sign off on his legal attempt to help Trump steal the election." And we talked about that multiple times. He is also currently pushing Netanyahu talking points, and he's utilizing the Trump tactics of posturing and propaganda. Now, shifting gears a little bit, Rudy Giuliani, his trial regarding the 2 women that were poll workers in Georgia, it starts next week. Jury selection started today. Rudy was not in court. Now, former attorney to the point where he was a prosecutor on multiple levels and even an attorney for a former president at the time that he was president, 45, the Tangerine Tater. He wasn't in court. He was in New York, and his attorney said that he did not inform Rudy Giuliani that he needed to be present because his attorney didn't think he needed to be present. They are just racking up all of the Timu attorneys I see. Now, potential jurors were asked if they had subscribed or even viewed or listened to Rudy Giuliani's podcast. I didn't even know the man had a podcast. But breaking news tonight is Mr. Jack Smith. Come through with the come through, because the documents trial in DC starts in 3 months. Y'all know that, right? We 3 months out. So there was a new filing And it stated that evidence will be presented showing Trump laid the groundwork for his quote unquote big election lie as early as 2012 as a catch all for any election results he didn't like. Also, keep in mind that pre screening forms have been sent out to potential jurors. The trial begins, like I said, in 3 months, and the Trump team has been requesting all information regarding to Ray Epps. Now, you remember Ray Epps is the January 6th insurrectionist who Fox News decided with a couple people on the internet when they were trying to switch up the narrative, like, oh, snap, we forgot people got to see this in 4K. We need to have a cover story. They claimed that he was an FBI agent. Ray Epps is currently suing Fox regarding this claim because it's unequivocally false. And keep in mind that Ray Epps was recently in court and he pled guilty for his involvement in January 6th. But honey, that ain't where we gonna stop. You know that ain't where we're gonna stop. Because of course, I got some more information for you.
And new filings showing insights into what Jack Smith is planning as his blueprint for putting Trump on trial. We have this new DOJ filing that reveals Smith will offer certain types of evidence that Trump has actually been evincing intent and lies about elections all the way back to 2012, long before the incidents that are being litigated in this criminal case. Smith's team says that will prove the intent by showing the common plan of falsely blaming fraud for election results he does not like. They point all the way back to 2012 where, yep, if it happened, there's a tweet for it, right? We've talked about how some tweets may or may not annoy you, but this one is now criminal evidence in a case that could send Trump to prison if convicted. So we're showing you why Jack Smith pulled this. Trump falsely claiming machines were switching votes from Romney to Obama. No one ever said he was original. They've been replagiarizing this stuff for a long time. Here's another 2016 rally comment.
They even want to try to rig the election at the polling booths. And believe me, there's a lot going on. Do you ever hear these people? They say there's nothing going on. People that have died 10 years ago are still voting. Illegal immigrants are voting.
And during the 2016 campaign, which Donald Trump did win through the Electoral College, Trump famously, publicly vowed not to accept the results, but to sort of just see if he won.
I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time.
Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Okay, there you go. Jack Smith's team will also, they say, use evidence that shows that Trump had this plan to remain in power at any cost, even in the face of potential violence, and citing the exchange he had with a reporter in 2020.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
Get rid of the ballots. There won't be a transfer because he did not intend to transfer power. What you're looking at there are the words, honest in a way, from a would-be dictator. He just didn't have enough military might or public violence to get him where he wanted to go. That's Jack Smith's argument. The president's lawyers argue not only do they say he's immune from what he did as a president, but that none of this amounts to criminal activity. He is legally presumed innocent.
He admits to having a copy of Mein Kampf. He has admitted publicly on television that he has good genes because of his German ancestry. He wrote love letters to Kim Jong-un. With all of that was stated well before this current election, isn't it funny that white liberals are now just freaking out about the potential of him being elected? But racism doesn't exist. And it's us, Black, brown, indigenous people of color that are perpetuating it forward by talking about our lived experiences and bringing forth the real, actual, factual, unrevisioned, unwhitewashed history. They already knew. They just knew that they would be protected. And this time around, they don't feel like they would be protected because they haven't been following things the way that the rest of us have. So they think that Project 2025 is going to be something new and all this other bullshit. And if you think that I'm talking out the side of my ass, once again, links in the description of this video. Because if I continue to break everything down to a micro level, we'll be here for 16 hours. And that will just scratch the surface. Now, remember, oh, definitely. The presidency was the first time Trump actually was making money, that he was earning revenue. Because the Trump organization has not always been called the Trump organization. It was originally Mary Trump and Sons, because it was his grandmother who had the forethought to, instead of just keep the family poor and keep the family in debt by buying up property that was just sitting there, or just having a few brothels here and there and getting pennies on the dollar. You could build stuff up on the property and rent it out. But see, Trump wasn't good at that. He's a good welfare queen, but he was good at making the Trump name sound, be more profitable. That's why he started branding it out. That's why you see him right now look at everything as if it's ratings, if it's clicks and views on social media, because he's selling a brand. He's not selling an actual product. A lot of these buildings that people think are owned by Trump, they're not. They just have the Trump name on it. Just like, remember that viral video that went down where they took Trump's name off of a building in New York. He never owned the building. They licensed the ability to put the Trump name on there because it was a good branding deal. And how it was a good branding deal for so long when everything associated with the Trump name under him was failing. Trump wasn't even his daddy's first choice to take over the company. His older brother, Fred, couldn't stand his daddy because of all the abuse and all the combat that goes on in that family and all the conflict and how poorly Fred Sr. treated Fred Jr. Fred Jr. was like, you know what? I'm going to go off and be a pilot. I'm going to go do what I want. And they're anti-military from the rooter to the tutor. That's how they ended up in the United States, being anti-military. That's why Trump was insistent on having a military parade to have the military bow to him as a once and for all, fuck you. Y'all didn't want to accept me into New York society. You didn't want me to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to show y'all that the military is going to bow to me. And they didn't. They didn't. They didn't. And remember when I kept telling y'all that the attorney that was on another team that went on Fox News, that it was publicly said that she was being official litigation team and put on the election team. And then in New York, she just popped up and she looking like Melania Trump 2.0. And we thought she was a new Trump attorney. She's not.
I read the entire 74-page lawsuit against Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, so you don't have to. And spoilers, she is a bad person who needs to be disbarred. The suit was filed by Alice Bianco, who started working at Trump's Bedminster golf course when she was 21. Her boss, the food and beverage manager at the club, almost immediately started sexually harassing her and then SA'd her. I'm not going to go into the details because I don't want to trigger anybody, but here's screenshots of the complaint if you want to read it. It's super gross. Alice finds out this is happening to a bunch of other employees too, so they join together in a complaint to general management, and Alice lawyers up. And a few days later, she's waiting tables on Alina Habba at the club, who she thinks is just a member. And Habba says, "Hey, heard about what happened. I want to help you. She never mentions that she's Trump's lawyer, and then she starts encouraging Alice to fire her existing lawyer. And if you don't know how being a lawyer works, there are rules, and one of the rules is if you're Trump's lawyer, you cannot talk to the person suing Trump's company. You gotta talk to their lawyer, and you gotta tell them that you're Trump's lawyer, and you definitely can't encourage them to fire their lawyer. Anyway, Haba claimed to be neutral, and she worked her way into Alice's confidence and poisoned her relationship with her existing attorney. So Haba takes over and says, I'll take care of you. You are going to get screwed, and it would be really embarrassing for you if this came out publicly, but if you sign an NDA, I can get you a great settlement. And we'll get them to pay for therapy too, and it'll all be tax-free, because I'm a really good lawyer. And she strong-arms Alice into signing it quickly and tells her not to have any other lawyer look at it because it's a really good deal and the clock is ticking. And also what? Don't you trust me? I'm your friend helping you. And Alice never even gets to see a draft of the settlement. She doesn't even get a copy until 8 months after she signed it, and only after repeated requests to Haba's law firm. And the NDA says, if you discuss any of this, you'll have to forfeit the whole settlement to Trump and $1,000 a day in damages. And Haba tells Alice that the media would only pay like $3,000 for the story anyway. And those were all lies. And Alice was protected by a bunch of New Jersey law. And so putting those things into the NDA were illegal. Also, she did have to pay taxes on the settlement. And there was no therapy money. And Haba ghosted her right after she signed it, other than a quick text that said, I technically can't give you any legal advice. And then Haba is all over the news representing Trump in his New York fraud trial, and that's when it dawns on Alice, Haba wasn't my friend. She wasn't neutral. She was Trump's lawyer all along and got me to sign a shit deal to protect Trump. And if you want to know how super illegal everything Haba did was, here are all the rules of professional conduct Haba violated. And Alice isn't asking for a windfall. She wants the court to release her from the illegal NDA and the terms of the settlement that she was coerced into signing, and that Haba be referred to the bar for discipline, and that Haba pay Alice's new real attorney fees. And man, I hope Haba gets disbarred over this. This behavior is so freaking egregious. It is totally unethical and illegal. So, is it any surprise Trump likes her so damn much?
I stand by my assessment. Thus far in 2023, my assessments have not been wrong. I have not missed. And this is not me patting myself on the back, because there have been plenty of times that I was hoping and praying that I was wrong. This woman has been around for a while, and even in those little snippets of pictures of her through time, have you seen how this is the same woman that has wardrobe changes during the New York fraud trial. And we know that Melania has been incognito, but she decided to step out and try to make herself center stage at former FLOTUS Rosalind Carter's public memorial service. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I am not. But the self-esteem of Melania is in the gutter, because she sat there and watched her husband talk about anchor babies, and she has one. Talk about immigrants, and she is one. Talk about birthright citizenship. You know the drill. And being able to become a citizen and then bring your family members over and kind of grease the wheels and make it easier for them to become citizens, like what happened with her parents. And remember, he greased the palms of some people to get her citizenship through an Einstein grant. The same woman who plagiarized a speech by Michelle Obama. And given the improprieties that Trump knew about beforehand, because obviously he asked her to do it, I'm beginning to wonder, after some research, I still have some more to do. So this is just a preliminary assessment. Like I said, I still have more research to do. Y'all know I get into the nitty gritty. I wonder if that's why he's keeping her on the legal team after saying that she would be moved to the election campaign team. Because a lot of his defenses are, I took advice of counsel, but she's not the lead counsel. Chris Kice is. Remember when I brought y'all the breakdown on him, a former state solicitor? The one that this week went before the appellate court and wanted to strong arm them into removing the gag order. But once again, thank you for joining me here. Please make sure if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you share it with your friends, share it on your social media, and feel free to take clips from the show and share it wherever you want. But most importantly, make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. And I will see you all starting tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the coverage of. I got new pajamas. You know, every time there's a GOP debate, I go scouring through small businesses and I got new pajamas. And I got some glasses I haven't been able to wear yet, and they match the pajamas. So that's what we're gonna rock with. That's that. Like I said, if I get anything on the Trump front, if he changes his mind, excuse me, and wants to have counter programming, because it never lines up perfectly with the debate. So it doesn't affect any of the ratings of the debate, since ratings are so important to him. So yeah. No, don't get too excited over these new PJs. Because I went to the discount store and there wasn't no sizes on these pajamas. So we're gonna roll the dice with them. Okay. I just kind of guessed. They might be sitting on my pinky tomorrow. They might fit. I don't know. But we're gonna have fun with it. So between right now and tomorrow, get your snacks, get your beverages. We gonna make it do what it do. We gonna make it do what it do. And although tonight we were supposed to have our first candidate on, that candidate is currently at a city council meeting, which they should be. So next Tuesday, we will have who we love, who we adore, Brendan, to talk about his candidacy. And I will bring you as many candidates as I can that are getting it from the grassroots. So invite people over to come and watch, because We do great numbers when I do the GOP debates. So y'all like my content. Why aren't you coming back for the rest of it? I don't know. But check the link tree here and make sure you follow me on TikTok for historical content and breaking history as it happens right before our eyes. Okay? All right. Okay? And as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. I will see y'all tomorrow. Don't forget, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You won't have to remember if you're subscribed and you turn on notifications. Till tomorrow, y'all.